Today's gospel offers us an opportunity to reflect upon the virtue of mercy. Life has shown us that love of God does not automatically translate into love of one's neighbor. This is the context of today's parable of the Good Samaritan. Jesus and the scholar of the law agree that the great commandment is to love God with all your heart, your being, your strength, and your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. To justify himself, the scholar asks Jesus, "But who is my neighbor? Is it my brother or sister, an acquaintance? Is it the family next door or a friend? Is my neighbor a stranger or even an enemy?" Jesus answers the question by shifting the focus from seeing a neighbor as someone we encounter along the way to seeing ourselves as the neighbor. We become neighbor to others because God first came to us with his healing love, with the hope that we in turn would continue his mission, his saving work of mercy. When we look at the first reading, Moses is teaching us that there is nothing mysterious about this commandment to show mercy and love. He says it's found within our minds and on our lips and in our hearts. All we have to do is carry it out. We're reminded of this truth each time the gospel is proclaimed, and we trace little crosses on our head, our lips, and our heart as a gesture reminding us to invite the word of Christ to renew our minds so that our lips proclaim the truth of God that is found in our hearts. Jesus tries to open the mind and the heart of the scholar of the law by using a parable involving a priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan. The hero in the parable is the Samaritan, a person who would have been an enemy to the Jews, because the Jews looked upon the Samaritans as half-Jews. During the time of their exile by the Assyrians in the year 722 BC, many Samaritans intermarried with pagans, making themselves unclean. In the parable, the priest and the Levite, who were expected to know all the things about love of God, ignored the man who was beaten, walking on the other side of the road to avoid him. Now, it is true the priest and the Levite risked becoming ritually impure by helping a dying man. But the law of mercy and love was more important than the purity laws. Jesus knew exactly what he was doing when he made the Samaritan the hero of the parable, because Samaritans were looked upon as the enemy of the Jews. And yet, Jesus holds up the Samaritan as a role model to follow. He was the one who was neighbor to the man who was hurt and dying. He was the face of mercy. Think to yourself, have you ever tried to ignore someone by walking on the other way when you see them coming down the block? Or maybe not answering your phone when the call attendant says the name of the person and you pretend not to be home? Or maybe you were in a large crowd and you saw someone you knew across the way, but you pretended not to see them. You didn't want to be engaged in a conversation. As long as we remain anonymous, as we hold them at distance, at hand, we are not being neighbor to them. In reality, we have failed in our call to be neighbor, and we failed in our call to love God. As St. John reminds us, he who does not love his brother or sister whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. No doubt the priest and the Levite felt sorry for the man along the side of the road, but feeling sorry for someone is not mercy. As Father Kosicki says, mercy is having a pain in your heart for the pain that's in another person's heart. And that pain in your heart moves you to action, to do something. The 23-mile journey from Jerusalem to Jericho was a dangerous trade route. And so on this journey, the Samaritan packed oil to cook with and wine to drink because there was no safe water along the way. Seeing the man left for dead, mercy and love moves the Samaritan's heart. So instead of keeping those resources to himself, he uses the wine as an antiseptic to clean the wounds and then puts oil on them as a salve for healing. And then he puts the man on his own mule. And once they reach the end, he uses his money for the business trip to care for that man. Imagine the shock in the eyes of the beaten man when he realizes that his enemy, the Samaritan, had actually been the one who saved his life. The Samaritan used his time and his resources in a way much different than what he had planned. His heart opened up, and he shared what he had with someone in need. Jesus asks the scholar of the law, which of these three, in your opinion, was neighbor to the robber's victim? The scholar of the law swallows hard, and notice he doesn't even use the word Samaritan. He awkwardly responds, I guess the one who treated him with mercy. He couldn't even say the name of a Samaritan. He had a long way to go yet in learning about God's mercy. Love of God and love of neighbor cannot be separated. You and I are to be neighbor, to be the face of mercy to anyone in need, even someone we consider our enemy. Love of God does not automatically produce love of neighbor, but we can be sure that if we love our neighbor, then we are truly loving God.